Turkey is quite interesting and a big market, and it's a huge market for our industry. One interesting fact about the Turkish market is that number of retail clients in our industry is much more than number of retail clients transacting in Istanbul Stock Exchange.
Welcome to From the Frontlines Conversations with OKX Singapore. I'm Osh, your podcast host. In this series, we speak with leaders shaping digital assets in the world's most dynamic markets. Today, I'm joined by Mehmet Camir, Executive Director of OKX Türkiye. Mehmet has led Turkey's foremost financial institutions, including the Turkish Wealth Fund. He also has extensive experience in the industry and is a strong advocate of digital assets since 2016. Today, we'll be discussing regulation, user protection, and trust in Turkey's fast-moving, fast-evolving crypto market. Thank you so much for joining us, Mehmet.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Mehmet, let's start with your journey.
Sure.
Can you share your professional background and what brought you here to OKX Türkiye?
Yes, I started my career in traditional finance. I was working for one of the biggest banks in Turkey. I was in audit department. I worked there for 8 years. Being an auditor in Turkey is quite beneficial start to your career because it lets you move around in banking industry, so you can learn every single type of transaction in a very fast manner. After that, I went to UK for master degree in 2016, and I was quite lucky because back in that time, London was a great place to be in order to understand what's going on in blockchain technology, because there were so many meetups, meetings, forums, etc., conferences around this topic, and I realized there's something big coming towards traditional finance. And I thought I need to learn. It was almost sure for me that I won't be able to retire from the industry in a way that I started. So that's how I started learning about blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And then I went back to Turkey. I worked for HSBC Turkey as compliance manager. And then I moved my career in Turkey Wealth Fund. And then I had a chance to step into this domain as a general manager capacity of the first licensed crypto exchange in Middle East. I was so lucky to know some people at OKX. They reached out to me. Now we are here.
That's a remarkable path, combining the strong traditional finance background with the forward-looking part of crypto. And I think that's also a trend we're seeing more and more in the industry now. Let's talk about the landscape you've stepped into. For our readers and listeners who may not know, Turkey is a very fast-moving market. It has very strong local crypto communities, but it's also known for being one of the communities whereby user expectations and demands are very, very high. Tell us more about the local landscape in Turkey.
Turkey is quite interesting and a big market, and it's a huge market for our industry. And there are two main reasons in my mind to describe this market in detail. First, the financial infrastructure in Turkey is extremely developed. So banks, EMIs are all doing their best to provide the best service to their clients. So it's easy for every single client to get a banking service at an ultimate speed. When I was in the UK, I was getting a scholarship and I had to open a bank account. Back in 2016, it took me 3 weeks to get a bank account, but it was like almost instant for Turkish people to have such a service. Such a strong infrastructure paved the way for cryptocurrency adoption in Turkey. And the second main reason is that Turkish people are quite tech savvy. So every single technological development has its own hype in Turkey. So combination of these two factors make Turkey a huge market. Now it has always been in top 10 in cryptocurrency. One interesting fact about the Turkish market is that number of retail clients in our industry is much more than number of retail clients transacting in Istanbul Stock Exchange. So it's a huge one. We are thinking more than 15 million retail users. It makes Turkey market quite unique in its neighborhood. And that's why it's quite important for OKX as well.
Thanks for sharing that. That's quite interesting because most would expect that in markets with very developed financial and banking infrastructure, Crypto can be a little slower to take off sometimes, but seems like that has had the opposite effect in Turkey. Can you share more about why that is?
There are multiple reasons around that. First of all, Turkish people love technological developments. That's the first thing. The second thing, unfortunately, Turkey has been facing an inflationary economic reality on the ground. That's why some of the people would like to have different asset types in their portfolio in order to hedge themselves. So, and cryptocurrencies are always on top of the people's lists. Big financial institutions like banks or EMIs have always been supportive to our industry. Most of the time, it's very difficult for our industry partners to have a banking partner in an onshore jurisdiction. But Turkey is completely the other way around. You can find talented people, willing financial institutions to partner with you. So that makes Turkey market quite unique.
That paints a vivid picture of why the Turkish market is so important. Let's dive into regulation because that's where the market's long-term direction is being set. How do you see regulation in Turkey evolving, and how is OKX Turkey engaging regulators to help shape that journey?
The primary reason for us to talk about regulation in Turkey is that regulators in financial industry in Turkey is extremely experienced. Every single industry regulated by government has traditionally have better ecosystem, healthier ecosystem. So government sees that the number of clients here, number of interest, transaction volumes, or exchanges investing in Turkey. So they cannot turn a blind eye to the developments of the industry. And I can see that this perception is quite overlapping with the global developments, to be honest, because in Asia, Singapore is the center of the regulation in our domain. And UAE has been doing a lot in order to regulate the industry. In Europe, now we have a MiCA regulation. And in the US, there has been huge steps towards the regulating the industry. So regulation in Turkey is in parallel with the global developments. The tough thing is that we had some negative incidents back in 2 or 3 years ago, so that the regulators are quite particular about protecting the clients. And sometimes we can tell that the regulation in Turkey is a little bit tougher than the global practices, but the good thing is that regulators are quite experienced and they would like to see a healthier ecosystem with reputable players. That's how OKX has huge role to play in regulation in Turkey.
Regulations bring the guardrails, but I guess what ultimately matters is whether the users feel protected. User protection, I guess, is critical, especially in an industry that some people associate with negative things like high volatility, scams, etc., etc. So I guess my next question is, how is OKX Turkey balancing the need and objective to protect users while maintaining a smooth user experience and minimizing friction?
As I said, Turkey is highly retail-dominated industry. We have millions of people transacting in our industry, but that comes with some liabilities for exchanges. We have, unfortunately, so many scams, scammers, negative incidents, etc., etc. So what we have done so far in order to create a balance between the customer protection and serving the clients in the best way possible is to lean on our global experience. OKX has always been in the forefront of global compliance efforts, and we have utilized the experience in our jurisdictions as well. For instance, what we have done in Turkey in order to prevent scammers is to use our product advantages. We launched what we call Eagle Eye. No one in Turkey has such a capability. And if you like to withdraw a crypto and you hit some of the risk parameters, you need to have another instance face verification in order to approve that there's no account takeover happen, etc., etc. So these kind of precautions show how we can protect our clients and also collaborate with government officials, etc.
This liveliness check eagle eye feature that you described is actually something that requires a lot of tech development, but it is these features that OKX has demonstrated that we are willing to invest to build features that protect and safeguard our users. Following this, the next step after protecting our users is to win their trust. And I guess trust in Turkey also has a lot of cultural nuances. Can you share a bit more about how OKX Turkey is winning the trust of so many retail users?
Turkish users are quite educated around the industry. They closely monitor the exchanges that they are working with. When they see we are collaborating with government officials, we are in good relationship with regulators to show how we are doing, how we are protecting our clients in other jurisdictions. And when we show that we have multiple licenses all around the world, that resonates. And people can say that yes, OKX is the right place to go and the right place to transact. And this company is working to do their best to protect the clients.
In your 2 years at OKX, what is maybe one big lesson that you want to share, or one big insight that you want to share with our listeners?
So one big lesson is that the cryptocurrencies are here to stay, and it's going to be changing the financial industry forever. And OKX is going to be the main company who is going to shape the future, because there is no another company who has been attaching utmost importance to compliance. That's why we got the license in Singapore, we got the license in UAE, we have MiCA license, we have so many licenses in the US, and we are doing our best to duplicate such huge achievements in Turkey. I think the biggest takeaway down the road, people see that the exchanges are part of the life, like traditional banks or EMIs or equity brokerages. And that's why OKX is going to be one of the biggest and influential players down the road in all jurisdictions.
Yes, we're definitely here to stay. On that note, can you share what can we look forward to in terms of OKX Turkey over the next 6 months?
Regulation is our first step. We are trying to duplicate your success, to be honest. You guys have done a lot for OKX in Singapore, and we are trying to do the same for Turkey market. In 1 year, we will be getting our license. That's the ordinary timeline, by the way. And then after the licensing period, we will see that the Turkish market is going to change a lot. There is no financial institution who has been dealing with buy, sell, crypto, transactional, etc. Once we have the full regulation, big financial institutions will step into this domain, and the retail institutional imbalance would change in a way to encourage financial institutions to invest more in our domain.
Very exciting times ahead, and thank you so much for joining me. For all our listeners, do remember to give us a follow. This is Osh, and with me, Mehmet. Thank you for listening in to From the Frontlines, Conversations with OKX Singapore. Stay tuned for more conversations with the people shaping the future of finance and digital assets. Thank you.